Welcome to this episode of Consider It Blacklit. I am Kim, your host, and for those of you tuning in for the first time, Consider It Blacklit highlights films, television programs, and stage plays that feature African Americans both up front and behind the scenes. We also discuss social issues as it relates to some of these programs and how they may or may not impact our communities. So thank you for tuning in, and we hope you continue to tune in each week. Today, it is my pleasure to highlight a documentary on the African American culture of gospel music, Say Amen Somebody. Let's take a look at the trailer.
Down through the ages, gospel, what? What did they say it was? You mean to tell me you don't know that? Good news?
Jesus dropped the tide. Jesus dropped the tide. Now sing, the grace and faith. Listen.
It's a feeling within. You can't help yourself. I feel like I can fly away. I forget I'm in the world sometimes. I just want to take off.
Can the message in the song.
Yes, indeed.
Lord have mercy. And you haven't been the same since.
That's right.
Have mercy.
Know someone who has everything, and he is my everything, and I'm happy just to know that I'm his child. Oh, and at night, you know my way gets stripped. I can hear my God saying, he brought me this far to
But the pure and hot, it's a
Today, to discuss the film, it is my pleasure to have Moikansi Kama and George Nierenberg. Welcome, guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure to be here.
It's so good to have you here. So before we start talking about this film specifically, I'd like people to learn about my guests. So why don't you tell our audience about yourselves? We'll start with Kansi.
Well, my name is Kansi. No. I'm the founder of Image Nation Cinema Foundation. We're a media arts organization dedicated to using film and music to depict the global Black experience. And so some of the work that we do, in addition to showing outdoor films and doing programs at places like Lincoln Center and the Schomburg and the Apollo Theater, we also help market independent films. And so we do grassroots marketing. And so one of our recent projects is Say Amen Somebody, which is an incredible film by George Nierenberg. And so we've been working with the distributor Milestone Films for the last couple of months to get the word out and help spread the good word about Say Amen Somebody. And we also are opening a cinema cafe in Harlem. It'll be called the Soul Cinema Cafe. And this film, Say Amen Somebody, which just wrapped up a three-week run at Lincoln Center, will be moving on to the Soul Cinema Cafe. Yeah.
So George, tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm a documentary filmmaker. I've been making films since I was a teenager, really. And I happen to, my biggest successes happen to be films about African American culture. I made a film on black jazz tap dancing, which featured Sandman Sims, Bunny Briggs, and Chuck Green, and Lionel Hampton did the music. It won an Emmy. It premiered at the Telluride Film Festival. It was shown around the world. It spawned a live performance with the dancers. We traveled all around the world where the film was the first part of the show. And then the dancers came out and performed. Then it actually served to revive tap dancing, which was a dying art form at the time. And it was re-released by Milestone Films a year ago and played at the Quad for about a month. And then around the country. And Say Amen Somebody, which is about gospel music, I made that film. I made another film about rhythm and blues, about the early days of rhythm and blues with Ruth Brown and Charles Brown. And so I'm best known for the films that I did about African American culture, but I've also worked in television and done other things over the years, and lots of things. But for this purpose, I wanted to sort of highlight that aspect of my career.
Oh, that's great. So I must tell the audience, this film was released in the 1980s, correct?
Yeah, it was released. Actually, it was really, the first screening was in 1982.
Wow.
It was released by United Artists in 1983, February 1983. And it instantly became a big hit. It was one of Roger Ebert's favorite films. It was one of the things that his wife is African American. It was one of the ways that he bonded with her mother when they were courting, by watching the film together. His wife Chaz will tell you that story. It was on the 10 best of the film lists. So it was very widely well received. So but I was so young at the time. I was 29 years old when it was finished. So I was kind of a youngster.
Wow.
And
So let me ask you this. What made you want to tell this particular story? And then what made you want to re-release it now?
Well, all of my stories are really about people. And they're less about what the people, when you say a film about gospel music, it's a film about people who sing gospel music, who live gospel music. But at its heart, it's about the people. That's what comes first for me. And as a filmmaker, it's being able to tell their story, be a vehicle for them, so that I know them and I get to tell their story. And it becomes a collaborative thing. I was drawn to the people in this film because of their passion. Passion also is something that, as a filmmaker, I am totally drawn to. And that people that struggle against all odds to achieve what they want to achieve. So those are things from a filmmaker's standpoint are, for me, they just things that I can really delve into and feel very committed to. So, and I really fell in love with them too.
Wow. Well, you did an excellent job. You did an excellent job.
Well, thank you.
Concy, why don't you talk a little bit about your involvement with the film?
Well, we basically were kind of the community face for the film.
Okay.
I reached out to local congregations. We reached out to different organizations. We used the base that we've been building over the last 20 years, showing independent films ourselves, to get the word out. We were doing groups. We were organizing and just really getting people excited about it. I did a screening at the Riverside Church where we had George come out and we had a discussion afterwards. And then we also went to Chicago and did some grassroots work in Chicago as well. We did a screening at the University of Chicago to galvanize folks and get the word out. And we booked choirs. And so I've just kind of been doing this whole process of getting the community involved with the film. And George has done a lot of work with the National Convention of Choirs and Choruses, so he was kind of leading me through this process as well, with his connections as well. So it's really it's kind of like grassroots activism work just around a piece of art.
Right.
But that's really what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So let's talk a little bit about some of the artists in the film. I know you featured Tommy Dorsey, who wrote the popular song "Precious Lord, Take My Hand." Who are some of the other artists that are featured in the film?
Well, just so there's no confusion between Thomas A. Dorsey, who's the father of gospel music, and Tommy Dorsey, who was a very famous jazz musician, and I don't want any of the viewers to confuse the two.
Yes, they're totally different people.
Entirely different people. So.
And I just want to interject this, for people in the D9 community, and I'll explain that to you later if you don't know what that is, he is a member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. But go ahead.
Thomas A. Dorsey is?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Thomas A. Dorsey is considered the father of gospel music. He's a central figure in the film. Mother Smith is one of his disciples. She came out of, they came around the same time period, but Mother Smith was an evangelist, and music was the way she communicated. And she was really an extraordinary singer. and also, but evangelizing was the music. She used music to evangelize. And then there's also the Barrett sisters, and then who are just, you know, they came out of Chicago, and their music, their harmony is wonderful. The O'Neill twins, and then there's the various ancillary characters in the film. Sally Martin, who was Thomas Dorsey's partner. He wrote the music down. That was radical for the time. He was going around to churches, you know, selling his music to churches with the hope that they would sing it. She saw what he was doing, and she said, let me go and sing the music, and we can sell them the music, and we can get them to start singing it, because this was radical at the time. This hadn't been done. There wasn't anything like gospel music, because Dorsey came out of the blues, and when he created gospel music, he took some of that blues feeling and put it into the religious music with the lyrics, and that was the birth of gospel music. By the way, I should interject, churches were not receptive to this music at all. Dorsey famously says in the film, I got thrown out of some of the best churches. So it wasn't an easy thing at all. But they went around training choirs, church by church throughout the country, till they got enough churches and they formed a convention. And that's how gospel music started.
That's interesting. Now that you brought that up, I have a question about how do you think it's different than the traditional Negro spirituals? Because when you say gospel music, I feel like we've always sung it since we've been here in this country. So by him introducing his form of gospel music, how do you think that's different from the original spirituals that we used to sing?
Well, I can't speak to that, honestly. Mm-hmm. I can really only speak to Thomas Dorsey and what he did. Mm-hmm. There was no such thing. There was no form of music called gospel music prior to him coining that term.
So maybe he was the one who maybe took the art of composition, composing, and putting it down, as opposed to us just singing what we did from our ancestors, I'm thinking.
Well, it was also the style of music.
Yeah,
it was not just the fact that he didn't take the spirituals and make it into gospel music. He took it was his blues influence.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's why Mother Smith would say, they didn't want that bluesy stuff in the church. She said, I don't care, that's what I sing.
Okay, got it.
So it was a bluesy quality. That's what hooked people. So he had been Ma Rainey's band leader, made her very famous, wrote over 300 songs for her. He had been very, very successful in the blues world.
That's very interesting. That's very, very interesting.
But the film tells that as part of its story.
Yeah. So I know a lot of the people in the film now have passed away, but when it was originally released, did many of them get a chance to see the film?
Oh, absolutely.
And what was their response? Were they pleased with the product?
Oh, they loved it, including Thomas Dorsey. Suddenly they became, because nobody had documented him, nobody had told his story. Had Say Amen Somebody not been made, Thomas Dorsey may have been a forgotten figure in the gospel world, don't you think?
It's possible. I think that, I was telling you how my cousin has a gospel radio show, and he watched the film. And one of the things he said is that, he grew up hearing about Thomas Dorsey, but he'd never ever seen him until he watched your film.
Right.
And he's in his 30s, so he's a young guy. And he said for him it was like watching superheroes come to life, these myths come to life. So I think that what the film does for a whole nother generation is make that history tangible and make it real. And so even if it's something we continue to hear kind of as folklore, this film makes it a reality for a whole nother generation of viewers.
Makes it visual so they can see it, makes it tangible.
Yes, he said to see Thomas Dorsey actually walking and talking and breathing was extremely exciting for him because all he'd done was hear about him.
And you're seeing him perform. You're seeing him sing the music, and you're seeing him actually conduct not just his own little choir in the Pilgrim Baptist Church where it all started, but at the National Convention of Gospel Choirs and Choruses. We captured his last appearance there, where he comes down the aisle and he conducts the entire convention, all dressed in white, singing Precious Lord, Take My Hand.
So talk a little bit about the re-release. From what I understand, it's been upgraded to 4K. What was the process to make that happen? Like, how
Well-
did it come about that somebody said, oh, you know what, I just want to re-release this?
Well, no, Milestone Films, Dennis Doris and Amy Heller are champions of films like this. They approached me and they said they would like to re-release my films. And they did that with No Maps, My Taps, and they also wanted to do it with Say Amen, somebody. They really believed in the film, and they believed in the timelessness of them. And that's really critical because they are timeless. People respond to them today the same way they did when they were released back in 1982. They approached the Smithsonian African American Museum of History and Culture, and they were very excited. So they really jumped in and got involved, very involved, taking care of the cost of the restoration, which is extremely expensive. Then the Academy Archive got involved and got involved with restoring the soundtrack. And I recorded all the sound in 24-track sound, so the sound was really kind of glorious. People loved the soundtrack. So when we went into restoring it, it wasn't just upgrading it. This was restoring it to its glory. So when you see it today in the movie theater, it just is outstanding. So
That's great. That's great.
and and from the perspective as a filmmaker, to be able to have it preserved for generations, that they can see this forever, that they can experience this film, and that the legacy of Thomas Dorsey and Mother Smith and the convention and all those other people in the film will live on forever, so that people can really get the joy and understand the essence of gospel music.
Yeah, I mean, the film really is incredible. You know, I don't have all the technical language that George has for it, but one of the things that I felt is that when I saw it, it took me back to my time in the Pentecostal church when I was like 2, 3 years old. My grandmother used to play piano in the Pentecostal church. And just the entire environment was reminiscent of that. And so many people who have seen the film say the exact same thing. And they all say, oh, it makes you think of my grandmother, or it makes you think of my childhood. And it takes you to a place that is good and wholesome. And it takes you to a time when I think the church was a lot more revered and a lot more fundamental and necessary in our communities. We still need it, obviously, but I think that we recognized it in a way that we don't today.
Right.
And so I think people kind of yearn for that and yearn to go back to that place. There have been folks who have responded to it just by, you know, there's one woman who saw it at the Riverside Church screening, and she brought about 100 people back to the theater.
Wow.
Because she was just moved by it. You know, when I asked her, well, what made you do this? She said, I was blessed by it. And that's a response that I've been getting to it over and over again. And so I'm planning on taking it to my hometown and doing some work just in my hometown, because I know this is what I grew up in, and this is what so many of us grew up in. And when I first saw the film, I said, you know, this is about gospel, but this is an African American historical treasure. You know, this is something that really we should wrap our arms around and appreciate for what for that time and for what it managed to encapsulate for us.
Definitely, I agree.
You know.
See how fulfilling it is for me to hear Kansi say that. Because as a filmmaker, what greater joy could I have than to hear her say the gift that it gave to her and to other people. You know, that for me is such a blessing, because the film really does touch you on an emotional level. It's not about, you're laughing because there's a lot of humor in the film. There's a lot of issues about feminism. You know, and it's in an odd way, it's very relevant today, because here are women in the film that really bucked the trend. They were going out to churches, and despite their families' objections and the church's objections, they said, I don't care. This is the music I'm going to sing, and I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And it's great that you see these very strong women. And the other thing that I think is really important is it's really about family. The strength and power of family.
Yeah.
Because you have Mother Smith with her family, her nuclear family, her daughter, her son, her husband.
They talk about how supportive her husband was throughout it. Yeah.
And that's it's a central element, and Mother Smith's grandson. They're all a central element. You have the Barrett sisters, 3 sisters. You have the O'Neill twins, and then you have Thomas Dorsey, who's overall family. He presides over the big family, the convention.
Let's talk a little bit about Thomas Dorsey and his publishing company. I was reading somewhere where because of him writing this music, he started the first Black gospel publishing company. Is that addressed at all in the film?
No, that's interesting.
But I think it's interesting that you learned that because this film exists.
Exactly.
You know, it kind of will encourage people to kind of dig deeper and to learn more about gospel music. We are actually, Image Nation is trying to organize screenings in South Africa, because one of the things that's important to me is that as this music form has gone worldwide, I mean, South Africa is very much into gospel music, has a huge scene. I think it's important that people understand the origins of it. You know, and I think that the popularity of the music will encourage people to see the film. They'll want to know more about it. They want to know more about Thomas Dorsey. Maybe there'll be people in South Africa researching his publishing company. So, you know, to me, there's this personal connection, but it's also a point of pride to really lay claim to what African Americans have done and the impact that it's having worldwide.
Yeah.
You know?
I know it takes a lot to pull a production like this together. Tell us about some of the other people who've worked on your team.
And the cameramen that shot this film were just, I revered them. You know, Don Lenzer, it was just, and Ed Lockman, you know, they were just, you know, they were, you know, at the time, you know, it was just an honor to work with them. And
Had you worked with them before, or?
No, I hadn't worked with either one of them before. Because they were involved, the film has a certain style to it. It's very close. The sound, Danny Michaels, and I think he's one of the best sound people I've ever worked with. And the sound reflects that. It's just you hear everything and anything. I want to make sure that I don't like films that are about music where you cut away to somebody and you don't hear what they're saying, anything. In this, you hear everything. Everything. Dorsey's walking down the aisle of the convention, you hear everything he's saying. You hear everything he's singing, you know. And then, of course, there's the editor, Paul Barnes, who edited this film, who's just, you know, Ken Burns stole him from me, you know. So, you know, and then he worked with Ken Burns for the rest of his life. So, you know, all I can say is I work with fantastic people, and you know, I have to, you know, you got to work with people that make you look good, really.
That's great.
And learn from them.
That's great. So what are the distribution plans for it? I know you mentioned that you were going to screen it at the Soul Cinema Cafe. Are there any other screenings planned?
It's already screening nationally right now.
Okay.
It's in several cities. It opened in Chicago on the 14th, and it closed there on the 26th of this month. It's going to be in Atlanta. Did it do St. Louis already?
St. Louis, yeah.
Yes.
It did St. Louis. It's in San Diego right now. Santa Fe, it was in Seattle, it was in Canada, one theater. It's opening up in London at the London Film Festival this month. It's going to be in Ohio. You know, it's all over the place. It's really opening around the country, which is amazing.
So the key thing is, if someone watching this show wanted to see the film, how could they get information on where it's being screened?
The website is sayamensomebody.com. And it lists all of the showings around the world. Okay, great.
Yeah.
And they can also go there if they were interested in doing a screening of it also?
Yes, or they can go to imagenation.us.
Okay. So we're running out of time, but I wanted to give each of you a chance to give some closing remarks, tell us about some other projects you may be doing that you would like people to know about.
Okay. Well, my big project is the Soul Cinema Cafe. We are still raising funds and pulling it all together, but we expect to open by the last quarter of this year. We're doing a seat naming campaign, and folks can go to our website, which is imagenation.us, to learn more about that campaign. We're also launching a new series called Cocktails and Cinema at the Apollo Theater. Our first one will be November 21st.
Okay, I'll be there.
Okay, good, good. And I'm really excited. We're showing Clemency, which is the film that won Sundance this year. And Alfre Woodard stars in the film. She's being, they're saying they think she'll get an Oscar for this one.
Wow.
So Wendell Pierce is also in it. And
he lives in my building.
does he?
Yeah.
Wendell Pierce lives in your building?
I love Wendell.
Yeah, tell him I said hello.
Yeah,
love
we need
them.
him to come to the premiere, to the Apollo event. But also, the director, whose name I'm sorry it escapes me right now, but the director was the first Black woman to ever win Sundance.
Wow.
Yeah, ever.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
she won the top prize for this film. So we're really excited about that one, as well as Say Amen Somebody.
Yes, yes. What about you? Any other projects in the pipeline?
I'm working on a project right now on sleep apnea.
Oh, okay.
It's a billion people suffer from it worldwide. Personally, I've suffered from it for most of my adult life, so I know really what it's like. And so I'm trying to make the public aware of the severity of it. In the same way that cigarette smoking causes cancer, sleep apnea causes strokes, diabetes, depression. There's so many things that have a result of it. You basically stop breathing when you're sleeping. So by the time you wake up in the morning, you're exhausted. And it's the cause of some major train crashes, truck crashes, and things like that. There are societal issues. There are family issues, personal health issues. And so I'm really looking for, right now, I'm looking for snorers. If anybody's watching this show and it's a serious,
I'm raising my hand.
snorer, I'm looking to cast a great snorer, some great snorers in my film.
I'm a great snorer, so I've been told.
Well, I'm looking for really, really fantastic snorers. So if you're looking to be in one of my new films, and you're a real severe snorer, contact me.
We're at
Okay.
georgenierenberg.com.
Well, no, you'd go to, the best way to reach me is gtncreative.com.
Okay.
gtncreative.com.
Okay.
And then you'll have contact information. I wish I had snorers.com, but I haven't registered that yet.
Okay, you heard it from George. If you snore, you could be a star in his documentary.
Oh my goodness, what a way. Oh my
But anyway, that is our time for today. We're going to put up on the screen again how you get in contact with Kansi or George about their projects. And until next week, consider yourself Blacklit. Thank you.